They thought the hard part was over. The loan was approved. The boxes were unpacked. The keys were finally theirs. A quiet street, fresh landscaping, a pool they imagined using on summer weekends. Then, one letter showed up in the mailbox. Not a reminder, not a normal bill. A demand, $9,400. Due because of a problem they didn't create, didn't vote for, and didn't even know existed when they bought the house. And the worst part was, they had been paying the HOA every month. At first, the neighborhood looked exactly like the dream they had been chasing. Clean sidewalks, matching rooftops, fresh flowers near the entrance sign, a gate that opened with a soft, electronic beep, making the whole place feel private and protected. It felt safe. That was the point. When people buy into communities like this, they are not just buying a house. They are buying a feeling. Order, peace, control. A place where the lawn next door will not grow wild, where the pool is maintained, where the entrance always looks polished, where someone else handles the things nobody wants to deal with. But hidden inside that promise is a second agreement. One most buyers do not fully feel until it is too late. Because the HOA fee you see on the listing is not always the real cost of living there. Sometimes it is just the cover charge. And what comes after can change the way a home feels forever. The full story is more complicated. Most buyers are trained to look at the obvious numbers: mortgage payment, property taxes, insurance, utilities, maybe closing costs, maybe repairs. And then, somewhere lower on the page, there it is: HOA dues. At first, it looks simple. A few $100s a month for landscaping, common areas, maybe a pool, maybe security, maybe neighborhood maintenance. It feels like one more bill. Annoying, but predictable. So buyers fold it into the budget and move on. But an HOA is not just a bill. It is a small government attached to your home. It has rules, budgets, boards, meetings, contracts, enforcement powers, long-term repair obligations. And when you buy into that community, you do not just buy the home. You buy into everything the association owns, the beautiful things and the broken things. That is where people get caught. Because a neighborhood can look perfect from the street, while its finances are already cracking underneath. The clubhouse roof may be near the end of its life. The private roads may need resurfacing. The pool may need major repairs. The security gate may be outdated. The insurance bill may have doubled. The landscaping contract may be rising. And if the HOA has not saved enough money, that cost does not vanish. It waits, quietly, until the bill becomes too large to ignore. That is when homeowners learn a phrase that can change everything: special assessment. For one family, it started at a meeting they almost skipped. They had moved in only a few months earlier. The neighborhood still felt new to them. They were busy getting settled, learning the nearest grocery store, meeting neighbors, figuring out trash pickup. The HOA meeting sounded boring. Budget talk, board updates, community repairs. The kind of thing most people assume will not matter. But inside the clubhouse that night, the room felt tense before anyone explained why. Board members sat at folding tables with paper packets in front of them. A few residents whispered in the back. Someone asked if there would be payment plans. That was the first sign. Then the board explained it. The community needed major repairs. Not cosmetic work. Necessary work. Roads, drainage, structural repairs, deferred maintenance that had been pushed back for years. The reserve fund was too low. The monthly dues had not been enough. Now every homeowner would have to pay thousands. The room changed instantly. Some people stared at the floor. Some shook their heads. Some got angry. And one question kept coming up. Why didn't anyone tell us? The answer was the part nobody wanted to hear. The information had been there, buried in documents, meeting minutes, budgets, reserve studies, disclosures, pages of dry language handed over during the buying process, when everyone was already overwhelmed by inspections, loan deadlines, signatures, and moving plans. Technically, it was available. Emotionally, it had been invisible. And that is how the trap works. Not always through deception, sometimes through paperwork. Because when you are buying a home, you are looking at the kitchen, the backyard, the school district, the interest rate. You are not imagining yourself sitting in a community room 6 months later, being told you owe nearly $10,000 for problems that started years before you arrived. But this was only one version of the cost. The smaller ones can be just as exhausting. A trash can left outside too long. A warning. Weeds near the sidewalk. Another warning. A basketball hoop in the driveway. A fine. A fence installed without the right approval. A larger fine. At first, the amounts feel irritating but manageable. $50 here. $100 there. A deadline to fix it. A note to submit an application. A reminder that the rules are binding. But these charges can stack quickly. Late fees, administrative fees, legal fees, collection fees, and suddenly, a small mistake becomes something heavier. Not just financially, emotionally. Because once those letters start arriving, the mailbox feels different. It is no longer just bills and birthday cards. It becomes the place where the neighborhood watches you back. That is the part people rarely talk about. An HOA can change the emotional atmosphere of homeownership. You may own the walls, the floors, the furniture, the memories inside the house. But outside, there is a rule book. Want to repaint the front door? Submit a request. Want to change the shutters? Check the approved colors. Want a fence for the dog? Wait for the committee. Want to install solar panels? Read the guidelines. Want to park a work truck in the driveway? Maybe not allowed. Want to rent out the house someday? There may be limits. Every small dream has to pass through someone else's system. And when the system works fairly, maybe it feels reasonable. But when it feels random, slow, personal, or inconsistent, frustration builds fast. One neighbor gets a warning for holiday lights. Another keeps theirs up for months. One homeowner is fined for a trailer. Another is ignored. One request is denied with no clear explanation. Another is approved because the board knows the applicant. Maybe it is not corruption. Maybe it is disorganization. But to the person paying fines, the difference barely matters. It still feels like control without clarity. And then the pressure expands. Because the real money is often not in the rule violations. It is in the things nobody noticed when they toured the neighborhood. The stormwater ponds, the retaining walls, the clubhouse, HVAC, the elevators in condo buildings, the private streets, the roofs, the drainage systems, the gates, the lights, the sidewalks. All of them age. All of them break. All of them cost money. And when a community owns them together, everyone is financially tied to their condition. Even if you never use the pool. Even if you do not care about the clubhouse. Even if the road was already falling apart before your name was ever on the deed. Once you buy in, you inherit the community's past. That is the sentence most people never hear clearly enough. You inherit the community's past. In one neighborhood, low HOA dues were treated like a selling point. Buyers loved it. Agents mentioned it. Residents bragged about it. The place looked nice, and the monthly cost stayed surprisingly affordable. But for years, the low fee came with a hidden trade-off. Maintenance was being delayed. The roads were patched instead of replaced. The walls were touched up instead of repaired. The drainage problems were discussed, then pushed to the next meeting. The reserve account stayed thin because nobody wanted dues to rise. It worked, until it didn't. Eventually, the repairs could no longer be delayed. The board had to face the math. Either borrow money and raise dues for years, or charge every homeowner directly. There was no painless option left. That is when people learned the difference between monthly dues and real exposure. Monthly dues are what you pay when the plan works. Special assessments are what you pay when the plan fails. And for families already stretched thin, that difference can be brutal. A retired couple on a fixed income may not have thousands ready. A young family may already be balancing childcare, groceries, insurance, and car payments. A single homeowner may have bought the house because the numbers barely worked. Then comes the notice. 30 days, 60 days, maybe a payment plan. Maybe not. The same neighborhood that once felt polished and peaceful begins to feel like a financial threat wrapped in nice landscaping. And still, none of this means every HOA is bad. That is what makes the story harder. Some associations are well run. Some protect homeowners from neglect. Some keep common areas beautiful, handle repairs responsibly, and prevent one careless property from hurting an entire street. In condo buildings, an association can be essential. Someone has to maintain the roof. Someone has to insure the building. Someone has to handle elevators, hallways, exterior walls, shared plumbing, and safety systems. Without collective management, the property could fall apart. So the problem is not simply that HOAs exist. The problem is that buyers often treat them like background noise. And they are not background noise. They are part of the purchase. The board matters. The budget matters. The reserve fund matters. The insurance policy matters. The management company matters. The last 3 years of meeting minutes matter. The neighbors who show up to meetings matter. And the neighbors who never show up matter too. Because in an HOA, silence can be expensive. If only a handful of residents attend meetings, a handful of residents may shape the financial future of everyone else. They can vote to delay repairs. They can approve projects. They can choose vendors. They can raise dues. They can change enforcement priorities. They can create the conditions for the next assessment. And the quiet majority may not notice until the letter lands in the mailbox. That is the strange thing about community living. You may never run for the board. You may never speak at a meeting. You may never vote on a budget. But you are still financially connected to every decision. Even the boring ones. Especially the boring ones. And that is where the hidden cost becomes more than dollars. It becomes time. Time spent reading notices. Time spent emailing management. Time spent taking photos to prove a violation was fixed. Time spent waiting for approval. Time spent learning the difference between a guideline, a covenant, a rule, and a policy. Time spent at meetings you never wanted to attend because now you realize your wallet is in the room, whether you are there or not. A simple home project becomes a process. A fence becomes a form. A paint color becomes a debate. A driveway becomes a violation. A rental plan becomes a restriction. The home is still yours. But your freedom inside the neighborhood is conditional. And then comes the twist many buyers miss. Low HOA dues are not always a bargain. Sometimes they are a warning. On a listing, low dues look attractive. They make the monthly payment easier. They make the home feel more affordable. They make the community seem efficient. But if the neighborhood owns expensive shared property and is not collecting enough to maintain it, the savings may not be real. They may just be deferred. A low monthly fee can be a future assessment wearing a friendly mask. That is the part people learn too late. A well-funded HOA may feel expensive today, but it may be protecting homeowners from a larger shock tomorrow. An underfunded HOA may feel affordable today, but the unpaid costs are still there, sitting in the pavement, the pipes, the roofs, the gates, the walls, waiting. And when the bill finally comes due, nobody cares that you moved in recently. Nobody cares that you did not vote for the old budget. Nobody cares that the repairs should have happened years ago. The association still needs money, and you are now part of the association. For the family facing the $9,400 assessment, the neighborhood did not suddenly become ugly. That was the unsettling part. The grass was still trimmed. The lake still reflected the evening sky. Kids still rode bikes on the sidewalks. The pool still sparkled in the sun. But the meaning of everything changed. The gate was no longer just security. It was maintenance. The road was no longer just a road. It was liability. The clubhouse was no longer just an amenity. It was a roof, insurance, repairs, electricity, contracts, and future bills. The dream had not vanished. It had gained a balance sheet. Some homeowners paid from savings, some borrowed, some entered payment plans, some sold because staying no longer made sense. Others stayed and got involved for the first time. They attended meetings. They asked for numbers. They read the budgets. They questioned the reserves. They stopped assuming someone else was watching, because that is what these communities often teach people. Ownership is not passive, not in an HOA. You can ignore the documents, but the documents do not ignore you. The resolution was not dramatic. No courtroom twist. No villain exposed under bright lights. Just a community forced to confront years of delayed decisions. The repairs were needed. The money had to come from somewhere. And the homeowners, whether angry or resigned, had to face the cost of the place they lived. That may be the most honest way to understand HOAs. They are not simply good or bad. They are financial systems with lawns and sidewalks. They can protect a neighborhood. They can preserve value. They can create order. But they can also hide risk behind clean landscaping and polite letters. And if the finances are weak, the rules are unclear, or the board is careless, that risk eventually reaches the people who least expected it. So before buying into a neighborhood like this, the most important question is not just, how much are the dues? It is, what am I responsible for that I cannot see? Because the most expensive part of a home is not always the mortgage. Sometimes it is the road under your tires, the gate at the entrance, the roof over the clubhouse, the pool you never use, the meeting you never attended, the repair delayed 5 years before you arrived, and the letter that finally arrives when the community runs out of ways to postpone the truth. By then, the question is no longer whether the neighborhood is beautiful. It is whether the beauty was honestly paid for, and whether you can afford what was hidden underneath it.